The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.
You could, as a college research project, build a database of all of the programs in the US. The challenge is building the system that is able to efficiently keep all of that accurate, up to date, and actionable.
Are you speeding the energy transition? Here at the Clean Power Hour, our hosts Tim Montague and John Weaver bring you the best in solar, batteries, and clean technologies every week. Want to go deeper into decarbonization? We do too. We're here to help you understand and command the commercial, residential, and utility solar, wind, and storage industries. So let's get to it. Together we can speed the energy transition.
Today on the Clean Power Hour, digital infrastructure for decarbonizing the built environment. I'm Tim Montague, your host. Welcome to the Clean Power Hour. Please check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Do us a favor, tell a good friend who is passionate for the clean energy transition about the show. That's the best thing you can do for us and the energy transition, frankly. But also give us a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. We want more people to know about our wonderful library of content. 2 shows a week, a pre-recorded interview like this, and a live news roundup and interview that I do with my co-host, John Weaver. Shout out to John Weaver, a.k.a. Commercial Solar Guy, who is also a journalist for PV Magazine. Today on the Clean Power Hour, my guest is Jeff Coleman. He is the CEO and co-founder of a company called Eli Technologies. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thanks, Tim. Glad to be here.
So, here we are in 2023. The energy transition is picking up steam, thank God. And we have, wonderful legislation in the United States called IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, and CHIPS to onshore and reshore manufacturing of batteries and solar and EVs and the machine that builds the machine. But we need better tools and technologies to make everyone's life easier, whether you're a utility or city, a contractor, and that's what you guys are about, creating a platform to make it easier for people to identify and apply incentives for energy efficiency and electrification of everything. So the Clean Power Hour is brought to you by Denowatts. If you're a solar PV asset manager or performance engineer, you need better data and better business intelligence. With Denowatts digital twin benchmarking technology, you get more accurate, efficient, and faster performance measurement results. The 4th generation Deno recently completed a technical review by DNV. You can download the report at denowatts.com. That's DENOWATTS.com. Now back to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey in the energy industry, because it is storied, and then why you co-founded Eli, and then we'll geek out on what you guys are up to.
Sure thing. Yeah, thanks for having me. So I started out my career at Earth Justice, which is sort of a big environmental group. This was in 2002 or 2003, and I was very interested in this concept that at the time was relatively new. That was the idea of climate change as a human rights issue. And while I was at Earth Justice, we won sort of a big court victory in the international court. That was kind of the first time that a big body like that had acknowledged climate change as a human rights issue. And that was sort of the very beginning of my interest in climate, the kind of human connection in particular, and who is being impacted and how. And after about 5 years there, I was lured away by a young senator named Barack Obama in 2007 to try my hand in politics, which is something I never thought I'd do. and joined the Obama campaign really early, went on that whole journey. And as part of that, I started to work with some really brilliant folks, many of whom were just volunteers who worked at Google or Facebook or something like that. And they came to us and said, hey, we build stuff with code and we would love to help you win this election. What can we do? And it took us a while to figure out how to get people like that involved. But we did. And I had this profound experience of, sitting on a conference call at 5 p.m., talking about some challenge or problem we were having in the Texas primary, and then getting on a call at 8 a.m. the very next morning with a group of people who are like, we stayed up all night and we solved this problem. We built this thing. Here you go. So I mentioned that just because I sort of, there's the beginning of my interest in climate, and then that was the beginning of my interest in technology and working on software teams, product teams. I loved how fast we could kind of iterate through a problem and figure out solutions. And I loved being the person who was sort of focused on the work on the ground and what we needed to do in the real world, and bringing that back to the product team and trying to figure out what we could build to solve it. So after the campaign, I went into technology startups, worked mostly in sort of the political organizing technology space for a while. And as I was about to have my first kid, sort of decided that it would be nice after kind of quite a long startup journey to have a 9-to-5 job for a little bit, or so I thought. And I was introduced to some folks at Grid Alternatives, which is, among other things, the largest nonprofit solar installer in the country, and really just a leading, a sort of thought leader on equity in climate, and in particular clean energy and solar, and bringing those technologies and all of the benefits of them to low-income communities around the U.S. I joined Grid in 2016, early 2016. My role was vice president of outreach, and that entailed sort of essentially bringing Grid's programs to the communities that we served, and finding, for Grid's solar program, finding the families that would get a free solar system on their roof. And you would think that that's a pretty easy job, right? Giving away solar. It was not. It was incredibly difficult. And one of the biggest challenges was that it cost us just as much to market free solar in these communities as it does for Sunrun to sell it. And I just thought fundamentally that was a big problem, that here we have these amazing policies in California, which, one of the leading, states, but even, a leader in the world in these types of policies, where large sums of money are being approved by the legislature to benefit low-income communities and bring the benefits of clean energy to them. And yet it was costing us, 30% of that total funding just to get the money out there and start generating impact. So that I became interested in sort of this idea of how do we create more streamlined, more efficient ways of getting these funds out into the communities and helping people. And because of my background in tech, I immediately started looking at sort of digital infrastructure as a key part of that solution, not the whole solution, but that essentially our lives these days as consumers benefit from a whole lot of digital infrastructure that we don't really see and think about. The ease of so many of the transactions we make, even buying a home, is for many people nowadays less complicated than getting all the incentives you qualify for to, retrofit your home. So it struck me as problematic. And so I started digging into that and discovered a whole host of challenges that I thought that software and technology could help solve. I brought together a team of folks that I have worked with a bunch, and we applied for and won a grant to build what is now called Access Clean California, which is the California Air Resources Board's one-stop shop for their vehicle programs, their transportation equity programs. So Access Clean California was kind of where my team and I cut our teeth and learned a lot about this problem. And when the IRA passed, we thought, hey, there should be something like this everywhere for everyone. And we set off on this journey that is now Eli Technologies.
That's an amazing story. I love it. And I totally resonate. I've been very involved with an organization here in the Midwest, the Illinois Green Business Association, the IGBA we call it, and it was very hard to get companies to participate in their programs. So they're rolling out certification for small and medium businesses to become more energy efficient and sustainable. And so these programs, though, for energy efficiency are generally managed by state, local, and then utilities. That is really the biggest way, I'm guessing, that consumers interface with energy efficiency. And I've benefited directly. I've acquired several smart thermostats, for example, from these programs in Illinois. That in my utility is Ameren, but then I think about when I want to retrofit my whole home, there's so many different aspects of that. There's the insulation, the air tightness, the HVAC system, the potential for putting solar on the roof or in the yard, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It is dizzying and complex, and the onus is often on both parties. I would say, it's on consumers and it's on the contractors and then other entities that are trying to facilitate the rollout of these programs or not. I guess that's my concern with utilities is they may or may not want to. I mean, it is a little awkward, right, that utilities are incentivized to sell kWh, for example, or therms of natural gas, and yet they're in charge of rolling out these energy efficiency programs, and that is a definite conflict of interest. And then the stories in the news, and there's a big one in the news in Illinois about graft in in politics, where the utilities are lining the pockets of legislators to influence the legislators and slow down the energy transition for all intents and purposes. So it is a complex web that we have woven, and technology is bursting at the seams. Like, we have so much great technology now. We just need to deploy it, as Jigar Shah loves to say. Yeah. And can we do it fast enough in order to stop catastrophic climate change from just kicking the shit out of us for decades to come, right? It's not going to drive humans extinct. I think there's actually some other things that I'm more afraid of. But it's going to kick our butt really hard. And especially low income people are going to really suffer from climate chaos, and already are. And we have mass migration happening across the globe because of climate change and disruption of food systems because of climate change. And if you're truly a naysayer, you're in the wrong place, because this show is all about people who want to speed the energy transition and who believe that this is a serious problem. But let's dig into Eli, Jeff. And sure. You were trying to explain it to me in the pre-show, and maybe I'm just a little slow, but it sounds awfully complicated. But what is Eli? And the website is eli.build. Check it out. What is Eli, and how who are your customers, and what is the value proposition to your customers?
Sure. So first off, Eli is a very early stage technology company trying to do something really big. So I think, your sense that it's really complicated is also our sense. I think we have a pretty thoughtful strategy about how to kind of take that complicated challenge one step at a time and build something really, really big and essential for the future we all want to see. But where we are today is, a small team of believers who have built something at the scale of one state that has had a really profound impact. And we see, as we started to think through how that could scale to the whole country or even beyond, we made a decision that in order to make it really easy for everybody to access all of the funding that they qualify for, and whether that's rebates, incentives, or financing, to make that really easy, you need to have new and different infrastructure, not just a sort of website or a service in order to accomplish that. So Eli is starting with, in order to tackle this challenge, we are starting with building sort of the most comprehensive, accurate, thorough sort of data set and set of tooling to access all state, local, utility, and federal climate rebates and incentives in the US. And that's a big task in and of itself. One of the big challenges there is, this is not static information. It's information.
Exactly. It's always changing.
Almost daily, right? So that's actually the main challenge, right? It's not, you could, as a college research project, build a database of all of the programs in the US. The challenge is building the system that is able to efficiently keep all of that accurate, up to date, and actionable. And by actionable, I mean not a sort of paragraph describing all the things you need to do to apply for this program, but actually creating a really highly structured set of data that can be used to power a sort of decision-making engine. So in other words, we want people everywhere, regardless of how they're accessing these programs, whether it's through a contractor or through a utility or a local government, to be able to put in some information about themselves, their house, their project, their building, their business, whatever it is, and to be able to get back accurate, complete data that enables them first to make decisions, because it's really hard to make a decision without knowing how much something's going to cost. And right now, when you try to get down to how much is this going to cost me with many of these types of projects, the answer is it depends for steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the process. You don't get to the actual bottom line until you've gone through quite a lot, right? So that's step 1 is, can we make it easy for people to make these decisions by empowering them with really accurate, complete information about costs, including incentives, financing, long-term, costs of operation, all of that stuff. And then the second piece is actually getting them the money. And so that's an even bigger nut to crack, right? It's relatively easy to do that for one program or one type of technology, but our goal is to essentially enable consumers and small businesses to get all of the funding they need right at the point of sale, and to handle processing incentives on the back end. And so that's a mix of technology and policy. There are programs where we can do that already. There are some programs that are not designed to be able to do that. So we have to get creative there and find other ways. So like most early technology companies, we have sort of a North Star that we're always pointed towards. And that North Star is make it easy for everybody, especially those with the most barriers, low-income communities, disadvantaged communities. Make it easy for everybody to get every single penny that they qualify for as fast as possible, as easy as possible. And we're working our way towards that one step at a time. So our customers right now are sort of two kinds. One is actual incentive program administrators. So Access Clean California, for example, is a program of the California Air Resources Board. It's administered by Grid Alternatives. Our technology powers that experience. We aim to have as many of these programs around the US as possible using our software to help them manage eligibility, income verification, and kind of all of these processes. What we learned in California is that when you are launching an incentive program like this, you have to build a bunch of things to enable things like taking applications over the internet, determining whether people qualify. And a lot of these programs are spending a lot of money on essentially custom software development to build this stuff. It's a little more complicated than you can get from your typical kind of website person. It starts to get into the realm of software development. So there's so many of these programs and so many new ones coming that we saw an opportunity to provide a piece of software that people can license for a much more reasonable fee to handle those complex parts of that. So that's one type of customer, is the programs themselves. And then the other type of customer is anybody manufacturing, distributing, marketing, selling these decarbonization technologies. So if you are, an OEM who makes heat pumps, and you want your contractor network to have access to a simple tool that allows them to let their customers apply for incentives. Eli can power that type of experience. And right now, we're infrastructure, right? We are a set of APIs and kind of related tools that need to be integrated into a website, a piece of software, et cetera. And we eventually aim to build some kind of more end user facing, tools ourselves. Now we are for the pipes.
So if I'm a program administrator and, I've got the lay of the land, that's what I got a contract to do. If I'm a third party administrator.
Yep.
But then you have this layer of OEMs you mentioned who are also incentivized to really get it right and dial in and be able to communicate with their customers and their contractors, and then the contractors' customers. Is it too duplicitous if both parties are using it, or does that work just fine?
No. So, the way I think of it is like in practice, the way these programs work is most programs have some kind of outreach and marketing effort for the program itself. And one of the big challenges of that outreach and marketing in the past has been that, so let's say I administer a clean vehicle rebate in California. I have this big organization and we get paid to administer this program. We develop all these marketing materials for that program. We have partners that we pay money to go out and market that program. It's not our job, and we're not paid or incentivized to be on top of every single local and other type of incentive that those same consumers we're trying to reach might qualify for. So we're out there kind of marketing this one program, and people are coming in through our website and applying for that program. And we might put something in there that says, you may also qualify for other incentives. Look around. But this concept that's become really important, and I would say there's a lot of folks at the federal level and in the space in general who are thinking about this, is stacking or braiding incentives, right? Especially for low-income communities. The difference between knowing that you might get $4,000 off of an EV and $11,000 off of an EV is the difference between being able to do it or not.
Yeah.
And nobody's really taken responsibility for ensuring that people have access to all the things, because the marketing and outreach has been distributed across all these different programs. So Access Clean California is an example of where, we built technology for that, but there's also this really powerful outreach network of organizations. And because of the technology, those organizations are able to go out into communities and say, you could benefit from this funding that's available. All you need to do is go to Access Clean California and figure out what you qualify for. And so they can kind of go out with a simple kind of call to action and a simpler message that doesn't put the work of decoding all of these programs on the consumer themselves or on a contractor. So to get to your question about, say, the OEM, the heat pump OEM, the way we think of it is the reality of these programs is that if you look at, say, 1,000 incentives that are processed, the way that those consumers get to those incentives is through many different types of channels, right? So some consumers their heater breaks, they call a contractor, the contractor comes, gives them a quote for a new heater. If they're lucky enough to have a contractor who even includes heat pumps in that quote, they might say, well, you might qualify for an incentive, but we need to get a bunch of information from you to figure that out. So people are coming at these programs from different sources, essentially. So the programs themselves are marketing and getting people through their website. The contractors are out there. There's often other nonprofits and third parties involved. So we want to create a common set of shared infrastructure that is kind of bringing a source of truth to all of these different consumer journeys.
The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more. Yeah. Let's talk about some case studies. from a consumer's perspective or a business owner's perspective, okay, you've got transportation assets, you've got vehicles, you want to transition them from ICE or hybrid to pure EV. And, there are federal incentives and there are state incentives, and there may be some other more local incentives, but certainly federal and state. Why is this even a difficult thing, I guess? Because, we have 50 states, or 50 states plus a few quasi-states, and not that many brands yet in the United States of EVs. Although go to Europe, you can buy, I think, something like 40 different brands of EVs now in Europe. It's crazy how that ecosystem is exploding. But from a consumer perspective, is this a hard thing?
So just to make sure I'm hearing, are you talking about like a fleet manager or an individual consumer in that scenario?
Well, I mean, they're both good problems to solve. It's a both and, I like to say.
I would say for consumers, right, vehicles are less complicated, I think, than say, HVAC or something like that. But only a little bit. They're still relatively complicated. And the part that's complicated, there's a couple pieces to it. So one is at what point in the process you get sort of definitive answers about the dollar amounts of things. I mean, since I started doing this work, I've become involuntarily the person all of my friends and family go to when they're considering buying an EV. And it's amazing, actually, the extent to which it's literally a case-by-case basis. Each person that comes to me, and a friend the other day came to me asking about EVs for his family of 4, and it's like I can't give some straight answers. I still have to start Googling to make sure I've got everything straight. And that thread gets particularly complicated with home charging and understanding that, and these are new consumer journeys. Like, people have obviously, a lifetime of knowledge about the implications of an ICE vehicle, a gas vehicle. When people go to buy an EV for the first time, they have a lot of questions. Some of them, there's various good resources out there for figuring this stuff out. But the incentive piece is still, like, for example, the rule changes around the federal tax credit that came as a result of the IRA are very confusing for most consumers. And, my family recently purchased an EV and the dealer couldn't even answer questions about that. Right. So these are moving targets. Like I said earlier, it's a dynamic set of information. Knowing, how to figure out whether the battery in your EV was assembled in the US or enough of it was sourced in the US to qualify, all these kinds of questions, right? Those are things that software can be really effective at solving simply and easily for people. And again, not as a separate thing that someone needs to go to eli.build to figure out, but as, when someone is browsing around on an EV OEM's website, they should be able to put in their zip code and see clearly which incentives are available in their area and what the total cost will end up being.
Yeah, you really put your finger on, I think, what is vital here is that consumers are thinking about brands, generally speaking. If I'm going to upgrade my vehicle, I'm looking at, if you're Tim Montague, I'm looking at Kia, Hyundai, Tesla, Ford, and that's about it. And so it has to allow for the consumer to put that info into the system, because some brands are eligible for some incentives and some aren't, because there are these wonky rules, which I think is an awful approach, about volume, right? And how Tesla is generally not eligible for a lot of these incentives because their production volumes are too high. I'm like, really, guys? The company that actually started the EV revolution in America, you're going to somehow try to hold them back? I think that's ludicrous.
Well, that has changed, right? They're now the IRA.
Is it gloves off?
Yeah. So those caps on the number on the vehicle production have been lifted. However, new rules have been in place that are more about ensuring battery supply chain stability in the US. And so there's new rules about what percentage of the battery materials are sourced in the US. There's new rules about, there's new price caps, like there's new income qualifications. If you're over certain income, you don't qualify for this, you qualify for that, right? So
you're saying it's truly a level playing field for the OEMs?
I mean, I don't want to declare that it is a level playing field, but that particular rule that you're talking about that put a limit on essentially the total number of vehicles sold is now lifted. So now in that regard, say Tesla does qualify. However, there might be other ways in which they don't, right? So vehicle price, so depending on and even I mean, this is my job now, and I still don't claim to be able to like recite everything from memory. It's like it's complicated stuff. So if the car is classified as an SUV, it can have a higher price point. But if it's not, then there's a lower cap on the price. And who decides, what's an SUV and what's not? Is the Model Y an SUV or is it not? Right. So all of these things for someone who's shopping for a car, they don't want it. They don't care. They just tell me how much this one's going to cost and tell me how much that one's going to cost. Yeah. Right.
And we're talking about one of the simplest problems to
I
solve.
was going to say the EVs are actually the simple ones, believe it or not.
The HVAC world and other things are, I'm sure, more complicated. So if I'm a utility though, or a program manager, sometimes it's one and the same. Sometimes it's multiple parties. I can see how, this might be a nice way to really buff out my platform. I've been busily building a platform historically of my own, probably, or, hiring some third party to build a platform. My understanding from what you've said so far is that you're kind of an operating system for these programs, and your job is to make sure that the database, the back end, is completely up to date, so that it just automatically gives the end user the most up to date experience possible.
Yeah, that's sort of step one. I think this is where we want to push for an experience that's even simpler and more integrated than that. And in many places, we already can do this. But the ultimate goal is you're buying a car, you've put in your name and address and all this information like 5 times already. So there is no reason that you should then have to go to some other website to apply for your rebate, fill out all these forms all over again, right? And so what we're able to do in some cases already and are pushing to be able to do as much as possible is to be able to actually push applicant data directly to the programs to essentially process the incentive application behind the scenes without the person needing to go initiate some other process and wait for a check to arrive, right? So obviously with tax credits, it's a little different, but for actual rebates are what we want to see as much as possible. And thankfully, some of these programs from the IRA may well come out as point of sale rebates to start with, and that's great. But for all programs, as much as possible, obviously there's huge equity implications to making people wait to get the money. Lots and lots of people cannot front the government thousands of dollars and wait to get that money at a later date. If they're going to be able to buy the car or whatever, they need the money. They need the price to be the price on the day they buy it, not wait 6 months to get the money.
So is that one of the business lines that you're in, is helping to get that money fronted?
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously early days in building the infrastructure for this at this phase, but that's the vision is to, our North Star is you just go buy the thing and you get the price that reflects all of the rebates and you get the best possible financing. And that's the other piece of this that we haven't talked a lot about, is just that the financing landscape around this stuff is very fragmented, and there's not really a lot of kind of consumer friendly competition. Often if you're, for example, getting a heat pump installed in your home, typically a contractor will just say, well, here's the cash price and here's the financing price.
Yep.
and you get your financing from our partner here, this, credit union or whatever, there are increasingly, more lenders getting into the space. There are larger lenders who have been hesitant and are looking for opportunities to get involved. And then there are, and since our focus is heavily on low income and disadvantaged communities, there are a lot of really great programs coming and some that already exist that provide, sort of non-predatory, non-subprime loans to people who otherwise might not be able to get them. And it's just hard to figure out what the best option is and what you qualify for and how to get it. And so what we think we can do with software is just basically, you tell you, here's the best possible kind of capital stack, for lack of a less technical term, but like, here's the best money available to you to do this thing you want to do, right? Here's the best loan option we can find. Here are the incentives you qualify for, and here's all the money, and we'll handle the paperwork.
I mean, in a perfect world, it seems to me like the United States would just say, we're going to roll this out for every American, no matter where they live. And you as a consumer can access this information. It's fine that others are going to access it as well. But like, that's one of the things that irks me about democracy and the United States versus China, where they have this command and control economy. And they can just decide, okay, we are going to make 100-year plan to execute on the energy transition. And in the U.S., we're going in fits and starts, depending on the way the weather's blowing and the wind is blowing. And that's clearly, inefficient. And so I heard Senator Mark Kelly quip on stage this morning that, if the Senate had been in charge of getting to the moon, the rocket would have never left the pad. And so yes, he's a four-time spacefaring astronaut in his previous life. But so I'm excited. Okay, I'm very interested in this. What we're talking about is reducing the soft costs and the amount of brain cycles that anybody, whether you're a consumer, a contractor, and a program administrator, needs to spend. I mean, the value proposition here is tremendous. How do we pay for this? And what do you say to other states? Okay, you're living in la la land. Forgive my snide comment here, but California is 10 years ahead of the rest of the country when it comes to these things. And it's a major state, a major economy. We want California to continue to be a thought leader. But what do you say to Illinois or Ohio or Florida or, some of the slower moving places, and how do we also embrace this new technology?
Well, first off, obviously the IRA is good news on that front, and there may be some variance in how states roll it out and how effective they are at that. I mean, obviously, California is certainly, I think, ahead on many fronts and also just big. So not a representative sample, but there are a lot of other states who I mean, Maine has Efficiency Maine is an incredible program. In fact, I would say, like, I wish there was something like that in California that was as comprehensive and effective. There's Michigan is doing a lot of really great stuff. The Michigan Saves program. So there are lots of bright spots, I would say now. And with the IRA, hopefully many, many more coming. We're talking to lots of state energy offices. And I think the way I think of that is that, the IRA is kind of a baseline, right? If there's a state that really doesn't have a lot going on this front, that's all the more reason actually that they should talk to us, frankly, is that if you have an Efficiency Maine type program, right, this infusion of funding to stand up new programs through the IRA is sort of easy to plug into your existing infrastructure in a state that has not done a lot of work on this front. there's a lot of work to do to just get a program, to stand up a new program, to build a website, to, build an effective outreach and marketing campaign around it. All of that stuff is a lot of work. And I think there is, bringing good news to the conversation. There's a whole community of organizations and coalitions and folks who have done this stuff in places like California and other states like Maine, who are working to try and create, for example, the Building Decarbonization Coalition has this wonderful kind of consumer marketing campaign in a box that they have called the Switch Is On, that has been really successful in California, and they want to bring that to other states. And they're able to go into a state that doesn't have a lot of their own infrastructure and say, hey, like, we can help you stand up a really effective statewide marketing campaign for building electrification. We have, customizable marketing materials. We have all of these resources. And so, the IRA has spurred this huge kind of effort to try and stand up a lot of new infrastructure. We very much aim to be a part of that, but just a part. I mean, I'm sure you've felt the same way, as when you're focused on climate change, you really need to kind of pick a place where you feel like you can have some measurable impact and push with all your might, knowing that it's going to take a bajillion other people doing the same thing. So it's a very hard problem to wrap your head around and say, well, I'm going to make sure all of this gets solved. And so our approach is, we're a small but mighty team, and we want to build this kind of critical piece of infrastructure, but we very much will be relying on a lot of other folks to pick up the ball and run with it, to have the impact we want to have.
Yeah, I mean, it does make me think that if you're at all involved in this world as a state or a local authority, that this platform would give you a way to compare what's going on in your state to other states and get ideas. I Googled the question, show me a map of energy efficiency programs or scoring energy efficiency programs, and I discovered an organization called ACEE, the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, and they have a lovely map on their policy. It's called the State Policy Scorecard, and there's tremendous overlap in this and where, for example, renewable energy is happening. Number one is California. Number two is Massachusetts. Number three is New York, Vermont, Maine, D.C., Rhode Island, Maryland, Connecticut, Minnesota, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, New Jersey, Michigan, Illinois. My state comes in number 16, unfortunately. We're a top 5 state for clean energy, but so there's many ways that people could use this platform. What is the status of Eli, and when are you doing like a full launch and rollout to many places?
So we are, we have a small set of kind of pilot customers, beta customers using our software now. We're basically every day deepening our data set around local and utility programs in particular. We have a pretty robust data set around state level and federal programs, of course. And we're going to be launching in earnest later this year, probably midsummer, late summer. That's timed a little bit with when the Department of Energy will be issuing kind of the guidelines and the guidance to states for implementing the IRA. And, that's where we aim to have a lot of impact, is it helping as anywhere possible to help the states launch these programs. And, we are far from a partisan organization, but we would like to see a lot more programs like the IRA and a lot more money funneled into the IRA. And we know that is inextricably tied to politics. And we want to be a part of helping to demonstrate the success of the IRA as fast as possible. I think, we don't want to see it take 5 years for people to actually look around and say, hey, wow, that law that passed made a big difference. We want to show that impact as quickly as possible so that we can get more, because frankly, as ginormous as the IRA is, it's nowhere near big enough. And that's not a criticism of the political process. It's just the reality is, like, we're going to need more money appropriated for these programs in the future for sure. So our approach to that is not to go, I don't ever want to work on a political campaign again, but I would like to help just, put our money where our mouth is and show the world that these policies make a big difference.
I have one last question.
Sure.
And I'm thinking about the people that are making sure the database is up to date. So they're scouring all these websites, and there are now narrow AIs like ChatGPT that make this problem much easier, I think. Is machine learning and AI something that Eli is leveraging?
Yes. Frankly, almost any software company that you would interview today would say yes to that answer. If you're not at least exploring how those tools can help you build what you want to build, you're probably going to end up being behind. So yeah, we are leveraging those tools. I would say, the reality of this problem is that it's one of many, I think, that is, similar to say healthcare is like, AI can be a powerful assistant, but it can never be the decider because the stakes of getting it wrong are too high when we get into like financial. There's a lot of like important trust and security based things when you're dealing with.
We need the humans to do the fact checking and the ultimate switch flipping. I'm not suggesting that we just unleash the bots, but the bots, they can work while we're sleeping and make sure that, when there are new incentives that they get filtered through to the consumer, right?
The tricky thing is that, without getting too in the weeds, the tricky thing is that there's a ton of, these kind of text-based models. There's a ton of inaccurate text out there. Mm-hmm. And so, the process of determining what the actual source of truth is a difficult one because even the programs themselves have inaccurate information on their own website in many cases. So,
I love the ads. There, somebody is running ads that say, if you live in Illinois, the government will pay you to go solar.
Yes. Right.
Making it sound like it's a completely free lunch. It is not a free lunch. Okay. And that kind of misinformation is really irritating and ubiquitous. But, well, Jeff, this is wonderful. I look forward to catching up with you in a year or two and, seeing how things are going. And please let me know when I can use Eli in Illinois.
Yeah, will do. Yeah, great chatting with you, Tim.
The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by Denowatts. If you're a solar PV asset manager or performance engineer, you need better data and better business intelligence. With Denowatts' digital twin benchmarking technology, you get more accurate, efficient, and faster performance measurement results. The fourth generation Deno recently completed a technical review by DNV. You can download the report at denowatts.com. That's DENOWATTS.com. Now back to the show. Please check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Give us a rating and a review. Tell a friend, tell an energy professional or aspiring energy professional about the Clean Power Hour. That's the best way that you can help to speed the energy transition. And give us a rating and a review. I would love to hear from my listeners as well. If you have ideas for guests or topics that we can cover in these interviews or on our Thursday lives, please reach out to me, tim@cleanpowerhour.com. Jeff, how can our listeners find you?
Eli.build.
Excellent.
I'm there.
That is very simple. Eli.build is the website, and you're also on LinkedIn. I want to thank Jeff Coleman, the CEO and co-founder of Eli, for coming on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tim.
The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.